They've been part of the insurance world for over 30 years. As you can see by Craig's wonderful light blonde hair, he knows a thing or two. And Rob, who is also joining us, we've known each other for a long time, and it's really important that we are able to really voice what we need, what we're looking for, and then have a partner that we can have the honest conversation with and saying, what's available, what are the changes in this ever-changing of insurance world for boats. And I'm going to turn it over to Craig and Rob to just kind of kick us off, give us an overview, and then let's get into the nitty-gritty. And as we all know, there's been plenty of Titanic-type events over the last week or so to discuss for yachts and yachts that have been lost. So that's it. I'll shut up. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Rob. And thanks, everybody else, for being on the call.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Dietmar, and everybody for joining us here. Yeah, my name is Craig Chamberlain. We have Novamar Insurance. I've been in the business since 1983. That's when my hair was really blonde. Actually from the sun back then, not the way it is now. But yeah, so we've been doing this for a long time. We're all, our company's comprised of a bunch of boaters. Done a lot of sailing, sailed to Hawaii 9 times, and Mexico 40 sometimes, and Caribbean racing, and Baltic and Mediterranean, and kind of a lot of stuff over the years. Helped design a few boats and helped build a couple boats in the US and also over in Switzerland. And then have been doing this insurance thing, like I said, since '83. And we've assembled a nice team throughout the US. We've got 6 offices, I think, in the US now, on both coasts. And then also we started a new company in Mexico in '09, where we write, yacht business, but also everything that expats need down in Mexico. That started, 15 years ago now. And then Rob came aboard. I've known Rob for a while, several years. And then actually one of my first long distance races to Mexico back when I was, I think, 19 or 20, Rob's father, George, was on the boat. So our families go way back as well. Rob's done a ton of sailing on the East Coast, the West Coast, a lot of small boat racing, big boat racing, ran some big swans all over the place. So I guess what we bring to the table as Novamar is a lot of people that love boats, love sailing, have been around boats our entire lives, and then kind of putting that together when we work with these underwriters and have to place the insurance with various carriers around the world. So Rob, you want to step in and say a few things? Oh, you're muted, Rob.
It's okay. We'll say a few things while he figures out how to untap this. I think you just tap the screen and then it should pop up, Rob.
He was on the move today. I think he's at a Starbucks between places up in Seattle area today.
Okay, good. Before we get into details, perhaps, Craig, you could give us a little bit of a synopsis of what happened over the last 10 years with yacht insurance and obviously the evolution. What happened to the market itself? What happened with underwriting? Maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview on that.
Happy to, yeah. Just a steady consolidation of the whole marketplace globally. Fewer markets, fewer carriers participating, more data available for companies to analyze their results with regard to yacht insurance placements, not just for people cruising, but just yacht insurance in general. Up until about, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, a lot of yacht insurance programs were embedded in larger personal lines programs, home, auto, umbrellas, boats and yachts, or part of commercial marine programs. And as companies got better at identifying where their loss trends were, they started to pull parts of their portfolios apart and realized that yachts were not only very small in terms of their, the size of their whole books of business, but were not performing very well. So as that happened, companies withdrew, stopped writing boats, as you guys have probably encountered, that are cruising offshore in areas that are difficult to service in terms of claims and repairs. And so it just became a case of supply and demand. The supply continues to diminish and the demand has not. So The remaining insurers are they're a little more savvy on the way that they underwrite things and the way that they look at risks. And it's really important for us as brokers to submit very complete packages to these remaining underwriters with as much information as possible. So we get the best result, because these carriers, if they say no to somebody because they aren't comfortable with the risk, or sorry, there's all kinds of sirens here in Newport Beach. If they're not comfortable with the risk, or they don't feel like they've just gotten a complete presentation or story, they'll just say no. And once they say no, it's difficult to flip that switch back into a yes. So we try to be really, really prepared when we submit these packages to our underwriters and have as much information as possible. So, I mean, it probably feels like we're asking for way too much information, too many details. 10 years ago, we didn't need all this stuff, but now we do. So that's why. We just want to get the best result for you guys when you go off cruising.
How has the weather affected, and the incidents over the last few years with the storms and affect the underwriting profiles, the minimum insured profiles, the requirements? How's that? I mean, I can assume it's more complex, but maybe give us some concrete examples.
Sure. Yeah, when it comes to, for example, hurricanes, which we've all been talking about forever, the severity of the hurricanes seems to be increasing. And when a hurricane comes through any area, it could be Florida or the Caribbean or the Carolinas, whatever, it doesn't just take out a whole bunch of boats, but it takes out the infrastructure available to fix the boat. So depending on, again, the severity, if a boat is damaged in an area that's been hit hard, it might mean the insurance company is going to have to ship a boat, for example, from Florida to Maine to get repaired, or the Carolinas, wherever they haven't been impacted, or some damage that normally would be a repairable boat turns into a total loss just because there's nowhere to fix it. So yeah, for sure, hurricanes that had an impact. You go back and forth and say it's global warming, or maybe it's just other factors. Whatever it is, all the industry realizes or knows is there's more of them. They seem to ramp up more quickly, from a Cat 1 to a Cat 3, 4, 5 within a day or two, which means it's difficult to prepare for something that quickly. And the bottom line is it just costs more to get boats repaired than it did years ago. I think another thing that we see, and depending on the types of boats you guys have, we see that boats are just far more complicated and expensive to repair than they used to be. I mean, like my old boat, our sailboat we just sold, the 1885 sailboat we had for 23 years. Great boat, but nothing super complicated. Now you get these power boats with electronic everything. Pod drives below the water. Everything is interface. It's all electronic controls of the engine. So a lightning strike that hits one of those boats, in Florida, sitting at the dock or anywhere, it's a disaster. It's just a total loss a lot of times, where if it hit my old sailboat, $20,000 worth of electronics and I'm moving again. So I think that maybe doesn't affect a lot of you guys that have probably cruising boats like I had, but just in general, that hurts the marketplace, because these companies suddenly are looking at claims for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, and years ago it might have been a $10,000 or $20,000 loss. So just everything is, I don't know, it's almost like a perfect storm that's impacting the availability of yacht insurance. So, and then we've had, during COVID in particular, when one of the few things you could do is actually go out in your boat to get a little freedom, a lot of people with limited experience were what we like to call overboated, maybe, spending lots of money on boats, but maybe had not done much boating before. And, I totally understand why they want to get out and use a boat. Couldn't do anything else. So that was a dynamic that was tough to deal with too. Lots of people with money that were purchasing boats with limited experience were entering the marketplace. And that's kind of still working its way through the system.
Just with a show of hands, who's on this call, who here is looking or actively trying to improve their yacht insurance for the next season? All right, copy that.
Is that you, I see?
All right, so So what we'll do is, if it's okay with you, Craig, we'll go around the circle here and see if folks have specific questions that you could perhaps answer, and maybe bring up some other issues that we may not have that we may not have addressed yet. So we'll start with Jeff up there in the top corner. Jeff, how are you doing with insurance, and what are your concerns? Jeff in the blue shirt, although everybody else seems to have a blue shirt. No?
Yeah, you want me from Triangles of Joy, or the other Jeff next to me?
I'll do the other Jeff next to you first.
Okay.
Is that me?
That'll be you. Yes, Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Dietmar. Yeah, Craig, couple things. We've been insured with Novamar in the past, and never had the pleasure of meeting you. So thank you for hosting this or being here. We were the beneficiary a few years ago. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but we got I call it a love letter from Novamar declining to renew, but no real reason or understanding of what happened with that. And I know as a broker, you don't really make those calls. It's the underwriters that do that, but it would sort of be interesting to know what that was about at some point, or be helpful so that we know kind of going forward what we could do better. I think could have been an issue with the hull value or whatever. It doesn't matter, but I just wanted to share that with you. My main reason for being on this call today is I'm looking for insurance in the spring, February timeframe for the South Pacific, meandering down to New Zealand. It seems to be a real skinny market, to cover that. And then you throw in a US documented boat on top of that. It's like nobody really wants to talk to Americans, at least about insurance. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about that with any of your underwriters that you use or have relationships with, relative to being more than 250 miles offshore and meandering, down to New Zealand.
Sure. Yeah. Jeff, actually, I bet you were insured with what we called our Novamar Yacht program, which was a proprietary program we put together with some underwriters in London. And that was going along pretty well. We unfortunately got caught up in kind of the COVID situation. Our renewal for our program was a June renewal. COVID hit. I think it was in March when it really officially hit. And that particular reinsurer, which was Munich Re, closed a bunch of programs. They were just, frankly, they just got nervous. They had some yacht programs that were doing okay. Ours was doing okay, but not great. But it was doing fine. But they had a lot of other non-marine programs that were affected. And I don't know if you remember, but during those COVID times, several state insurance departments came out and said, well, we know that there are COVID exclusions on some of these non-marine policies, but we think that goes against the public interest. So you're going to have to go ahead and pay these claims. So when actuaries look at programs, whether it's yacht or anything else, they kind of look at past experience and then they predict future experience based on what's happened in the past, and then also the coverage contract. So all of a sudden, Munich Re was looking at this spike in potential claims that sort of only partially materialized. But then when their actuaries recalculated, they're like, oh my God, these loss ratios that are maybe at 80 or 90%, they could go to 200 or 300%. So they frankly just got scared. They shut that program down. And if you happen to be insured with us direct, we tried to find other markets, but a lot of our business was brokered business where other agents came to us and we placed the coverage for them. So all we would send to them was the notice of non-renewal, and then that agent would have to try and remarket the business with another carrier. So it just depends. I'm not sure if we wrote you direct, if it went through a broker. If it was direct, we tried to find markets, and it depends. If it was a 40-year-old $50,000 sailboat in the Caribbean, that was a tough rewrite. So we may not have been able to help you. But I don't know the circumstances specifically. Now we're trying to resurrect that program. I just was on the phone with our UK broker this morning to see if we can get that going again, or something similar to that going again within the next 12 months. We'll see. So.
And relative to the South Pacific coverage?
Yeah, South Pacific coverage, we do have a couple of markets. What they look for there, if the boat's over 10 years old, is a current halt survey. One of our carriers just sort of arbitrarily says, if your standing rigging is over 10 years old, we'll cover you, but we're going to exclude any loss or damage due to the rig, period, even if you've got a good rig survey or whatever. So, but yeah, they are a market that's still writing South Pacific business for us, and it's good security.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Lauren, any questions from a super engineer?
Well, yeah, my current situation is this. Unfortunately, I have two boats, but the one I have here in Annapolis is insured with State Farm, and I'm happy with them. It's good for the East Coast. But my other boat's a 1981 Cayana in Panama, and my insurance is expired in the end of October. And so I was getting insured through Jackline, and through Risk Strategies, I think was the broker.
Yeah, they brought that agency that created that program, right?
I'm sorry, say again?
I was going to say Risk Strategies bought the program that, I'm sorry, they bought the agency that started that program.
Okay.
So now that program, by the way, is available to all Markel agents like ourselves.
Okay. So anyway, I got a new quote from them, and of course it's higher than it was last year. I'm not quite sure what company it's with yet, but they're starting from day one. This about a year ago, they said they wanted a new survey.
Okay.
So, which kind of bothers me. I need a new survey, but anyway, that's happening tomorrow actually in Panama. But I'd sure like to find a less expensive option, and I would like to have an option that allows me. The current option allows me the Caribbean, but probably not Colombia. And I'd like an option that would allow me a couple of places in Colombia.
Okay, go to Cartagena and a few other places.
Yeah, and Santa Marta. Yeah.
Okay, right. So yeah, again, we could probably do that with another carrier. The hull survey is going to be important. I'm not sure how old your standing rigging is, but that could be an issue too for you.
It's about 8 years old.
Oh, okay, good. So if you could dig up those receipts, that's a great thing to, give to your surveyor so he can include that in the survey report to show that you did do that.
Right.
And then, yeah, we can probably do that with one of our other markets. And it depends on what you're going to do for hurricane season too. Hopefully you're going to stay south. One of the things with Panama, because they do have a lot of lightning, some of the carriers now are excluding lightning, or they've got a big lightning deductible. You've got an older, let's face it, fairly simple boat, so you're probably not as exposed as some of the new,
right.
fancy all electronics boats. But yeah, so I'd say there's probably some options.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I may be coming to you and asking for a quote. But...
Okay, great. Oh, by the way, you guys were talking about surveys. You guys, I'm not dealing with newbie boaters here, so you know what your boat needs or doesn't need, and if there's anything that needs to be done that you're going to take care of, well, if you can take care of that issue, that maintenance item, so that it doesn't show up on a survey as a recommendation, better. The cleaner the survey is, the better it is for you in the long run. So anything you need to do, just do it before the surveyor sets his eyes on your boat. Yeah.
Little boat keeping item. If you are interested in getting a quote, just put your email address into the chat room so that Craig, or send it directly to Craig in a message so that he can then capture the needs of different people here. All right, we'll move on to Patty then. Ahoy, Patty, how are you doing?
Hi, I assume I'm the only Patty on this call. Doing well, thank you. We're in Florida right now, and in early November, we're hoping to leave and go down to the Bahamas, mess around down there for a while, the Virgin Islands for a while, just take our time, go across, and eventually get to the Panama Canal, and then go up the west coast there of Mexico. So we have never made this type of a big trip like this on our own boat. So we're just right now insured with Progressive for being right here in Florida, but we're looking to understand what we need to get for the rest of the trip.
So usually an underwriter will like to see somebody that's done that trip before. So if you've done that trip on other boats with friends or done deliveries and things, that's great to stick on your resume. If not, the underwriter might say, well, we'd like to see you take somebody that's done that trip, for example, through the Caribbean to the Virgin Islands. Just somebody that's got some familiarization with the waters that you're going to be sailing in. So sometimes people will jump on just for a month or two. If you've got friends, captain, something like that, that bolsters a resume for an underwriter.
Yeah, my husband has a lot of experience, like doing Transpac from the west coast of the United States over and Mexican races. And I've done some of those too, but we haven't ever been in this area before.
I'd say the best thing is what we normally do is send out a resume form and ask you to complete that and include all of those different trips on different boats over the years that you've done. And if you've done it, Transpac deliveries back from Hawaii, maybe a trip to Fiji or something, sometimes that will work with the underwriter. It's not a hard and fast rule where they say you have to do this exact trip, previously, or to have done that trip on your boat. So it's good just to send the resumes in and we'll send it into the underwriter. And we always review the resumes first. And if it looks like something could be missing or there should be more detail, we'll contact you and say, let's include some additional information. Any classes you've taken, diesel mechanics, anything like that, that's always helpful too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to Joe Christensen.
Hello. Thank you for this. This is timely for me. I'm currently in Cook Islands, on the way to New Zealand, and my primary concern is I've grown kind of comfortable self-insuring for my own risk, but as liability insurance for getting into marinas like in the off season, and I imagine I have a 2001 Malo 42, so a Swedish built sailboat, and I'm going to need to acquire that, I've discovered, before any marinas will touch me. I imagine I'll need to get the hauled survey, like you mentioned. I am hoping I can get hauled without the insurance because, I don't have it. But what would you advise for someone in my situation?
Yeah, you would typically have to get a hauled survey because what the insurance companies worry about, they all live under their desks. They're afraid of the worst case scenario. So in their minds, you've got a boat that's, just about to sink or burn, or the rig's going to fall out of it and hurt somebody and everybody's going to get sued, or it sinks in the marina and it's a big, oil spill issue. So yeah, they typically would want to see a hauled survey, even for liability. Now, the New Zealand and Australia liability coverage requirements, the limits are really high. From our experience anyway, they do look the other way sometimes for boats that are in transit. But the limits aren't exceedingly high for what we're used to seeing in the US in particular, like 5-10 million sometimes. But there may be some local, Kiwi carriers, Australian carriers that'll write liability only just for those areas. So that's an idea.
And
I'm
also,
not totally-
Joe,
Yeah.
just a second. A lot of times when you do make the marina reservation, you are not the first one of the foreign boats that comes in that probably is self-insured. And so they may have a local way of getting liability insurance. As a matter of fact, since they're going to be charging you, it almost falls on them to say, yeah, you want me to have insurance? Well, where do I buy the insurance? Put the monkey back on them, right? The country cannot turn you around from coming in, but obviously the marinas will. So just simply put the monkey back on and saying, yeah, I'd love to buy it. Where can I get a quote?
Right.
And that works.
Yeah, and they may have a relationship with a local agent that's got a liability only policy that'll cover you while you're in that area. I mean, Australia and New Zealand don't have the legal issues that we have in the US. But oddly enough, they ask for very high limits. I'm not sure why, but they do. So.
Okay, and so you're saying I would not go through you for something like this?
Not for that, no. I mean, if you wanted to go through the survey issue, or have the survey done, then we can provide liability coverage for South Pacific Islands and New Zealand, Australia, all that stuff. But if it's just New Zealand, Australia, you'd go with a local agent and company. Now, what I've seen with Kiwi and Australian companies, a lot of times they don't want to extend coverage back out of their waters. So if you say, well, I'm going to go back to the Cook Islands or Tahiti, they likely would not be able to handle that.
Okay, so I am potentially interested in getting liability insurance for the broader South Pacific or even into Asia, so that would be something I might consult with you on and go ahead and get the halt survey and.
Right, do all that, yeah.
Okay.
Probably the best place to start on that would be, give us all of your information, a rough 12-month itinerary, and then we can go to an underwriter and say, can you give us, an indication of terms subject to what? Halt survey, whatever else they might need. So that's probably a better way to start.
Sure, because I'd rather have the broader insurance just so I don't have to do this every time I go to a new country. Like it would be nice to have a broader geography covered.
Right. Well, are you in a place where you can haul and survey the boat now, or somewhere close to a place?
I'm in Rarotonga. It seems pretty, or Rarotonga. It seems pretty primitive. I don't think there's a haul out facility here. Maybe when I get to Fiji or Tonga, or I was even thinking there's no reason not to wait till I get in New Zealand and just get hauled out, maybe even put on the hard. I have a few projects I want to do and get the insurance then and the survey.
That makes sense. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Specifically for New Zealand, there is a local insurer that I've worked with in the past, an agency called the Marina Shop. So send us an email. But for the bigger picture, I think Craig with Novamar is going to be far better for you as a U.S. flag vessel.
And right, yeah, Joe. I know Bill Garlick from the Marina Shop. He brokered business into our Novamar Yacht program when it was in existence. Super nice guy, great staff. So yeah, that's a good option for local waters.
Okay, very well, or very good. I appreciate it. And I think I had contacted the Marine Shop. They might have had a little indigestion over my USA flags, so I don't recall. But yeah, I'll definitely be in touch because I do want to get the broader liability insurance.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Who else? Gene Blair. Are you guys in the market? Or you're just listening?
So our boat's currently in Mexico. We did sign up for the World Arc. We have insurance through you that ends in October, and we're wondering when should we start getting the new insurance in place for our trip to Australia?
I would say pretty quick here. You're only a couple of months out, so I think it's probably good to start that dialogue now. Just start with a 12-month itinerary where you're going to be if in Southern Hemisphere, during cyclone season, or Northern Hemisphere during hurricane season, and start looking for options now.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I suspected.
Yeah. Are you on the Pacific coast of Mexico or are you on the East Coast?
Pacific coast.
Oh, okay. Then
But
I'm
yeah,
fine.
we'll sail down to Panama, and that's where we'll join the ARC as they come through.
Okay, I'll be working out of our Puerto Vallarta office starting Monday for a couple of weeks. So if you're in the area.
Nice.
All right, let's get to Jeff on tidings of joy, finally.
Hey. Hi, Craig.
Hello.
So we're in Pacific Panama. We're planning on going through the canal November, December. Our current insurance expires mid-December. And we are going to want to go to Colombia for a while and then cross over to possibly Roatan, Belize, and Rio Dulce, then head back to Panama. So currently we're restricted to 30 days in Colombia, and we want to stay there longer. We're restricted to 150 miles offshore. We can't get across to Roatan 150 miles from shore unless we follow the shore. And of course, going off the Mosquito Coast, we don't want to be that close. So we'd like to go straight across. We're a power boat. So what do you have to say about that scenario?
Well, have you gone back to your broker and said, this really doesn't work, and said, hey, look, I don't know what boat you got, but the range on our boat at whatever 8 knots is 800 miles, so you can make that trip without any difficulty. Have you tried going back to your current broker to see if they can do that?
Well, we're not doing any of this until after our current insurance expires. So imagining we'll get start dialogue with you. We'll get a quote from you, and shop around a bit anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So, I assume your boat has a Ranger. You wouldn't be doing this. So, yeah, we can look at that with one of our carriers. Sure.
Okay. And with the expiring insurance in December, when do you recommend we start talking? Like
I think
the other guys?
Yeah, I think 60 days is not too early.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Well, the
last
other
thing,
thing with you guys, and when we were cruising too, let's face it, we say 60 days and we want to see a 12-month itinerary. You know, when you're cruising, your plans change every week. So, but
Yeah,
just
sure.
give us your best guess and we can always modify it later.
okay, so I put my email in and you can reach out to me, I guess, and we can go from there. But last thing, our boat's an 07. We had a hull survey in and out of the water in 2022. Do you think we would need to do another hull survey?
They might, but it's always good just to just send it, tell us, you know, show us what you've got. If it's a nice clean survey, they might agree to accepting that one, you know, for the first year. Or they might say, can we get a reinspection at least in the water, especially if you said, gosh, I just hauled the boat 6 months ago, here's a haul out bill, something like that. So it doesn't hurt to try.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot.
Sure.
All right, great. Let's talk with Lyle Nelson. How are you guys doing?
Good. Hello. This is Diana beside me. We've just renewed actually, so haven't got a whole bunch of questions, but Canadian broker through Global Yacht Cover. Is there any pros, cons? Is it possible? I mean, we've always had the boat in Canada until last year when we went to Mexico, but as we continue further and the boat's not in Canadian waters for a long period of time, are you precluded to dealing with an American insurer or a Mexican insurer or do you have to stick with the country of residence?
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. For example, and you know, Global Yacht Cover, that's a good program. We do use them a lot. If you're comfortable with your Canadian broker and he's representing you well, then you know you can stick with that until you have unless you have a problem, I should say. Now, if you said, well, shoot, I'm going to be in Mexico for the next couple of years, you know, somewhere between Cabo, La Paz, Puerto Vallarta, Manzanillo, whatever, Barra. Sometimes the Canadian brokers and even Global, they have difficulties in full-time Mexico. So if that becomes an issue, we can certainly help you. Maybe with our, you know, we've got a separate company in Mexico, a sister company, and sometimes the people that are there long-term will place the coverage with a Mexican domiciled carrier. So but what you've got now is probably a pretty good solution, unless you encounter a problem, then we can probably help you with it.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that. We're planning to go through the canal this winter, December, January area, and then up the East Coast, back up to Canada on the East Coast side in next summer. So that's good. Good to know that we're sort of somewhere good right now, at least.
Now, one thing you may encounter is Global Yacht Cover. They typically use a carrier that's not really excited about having boats navigating in U.S. waters. So once you might talk to your broker as you get within, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks or a month before you get to Florida, and just make sure that they can accommodate that. If you're just going through the U.S. and you only be in the U.S. waters for maybe, I don't know, a month, they might be able to take care of that for you with the same policy.
Yeah, they seemed pretty happy when we renewed. Like ours is actually renewing in the next day or two. But when we had to give them our itinerary plans for the next year and stuff, we laid it all out for them where we were going. And the only comment back was we had to be north of Hatteras by the 1st of June. So other than that,
so you're probably good.
Yeah. They seemed pretty happy. Yeah. So other than the fact that it cost us a fortune.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a reflection of what it costs to, you know, deal with boat repairs and everything else around. It's just bloody expensive. You know, everything just costs so much. Yeah.
So you're telling us we're doing this big Zoom call, and you're trying to tell us that you're not going to be able to save us all 50% on our insurance.
Depends on how high you want the deductible to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Paula on Estrella has raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm in French Polynesia right now, actually, off of Hiva-Oa, and I'm a somewhat new boater, I guess. So I'd be overboated, I guess, is the classification. I've only been sailing for about 5.5 years. I sailed down from Puget Sound to Mexico, spent 1.5 years in Mexico, had boat insurance in the U.S. and had Mexican insurance, Chubb Mexican insurance, while I was in Mexico, and never had a problem with any of that, and decided that I wanted to do a solo trip here into the South Pacific, and then probably head back north to Hawaii next year. I attempted to get liability only insurance. I also feel comfortable self-insuring for the hull, so I don't have any problem with that. However, I spent months with an agent trying to filling out all the forms, doing all the itineraries and resumes, and probably spent about 3 months doing that, and then was finally told no, they're not going to cover me. So I'm not covered at all right now. I don't see it as a big problem, although I would really like to have liability insurance. What would you recommend?
Did they decline to offer terms because you do a lot of single handing? Because you do have quite a bit of experience.
They didn't give me a reason. They just said that the agent said they couldn't find coverage for me, and that was the end of that. And was a little irked by that because of the amount of time I spent putting together the packages that they wanted. At this point, I probably would have to get another survey. My survey is 4.5 years old now, so I would imagine that that I would have to get another survey before I try to apply again. But the question is, if I do go through all this effort, what is the chance of being able to get liability insurance? I guess that's my
Well, I
question.
think, yeah, I'm not sure, but I think probably it was a single-handed issue that they were having a hard time with. So I don't know if you want, you could send us everything you'd sent to the other broker, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we could run it up the flagpole and see if they'd be willing to offer liability only, if it's even just in marinas. So, I mean, I don't know if you've encountered problems getting into marinas because you don't have liability coverage, but that might be something that, would cover you for where you really need it. And then when you're doing a passage on your own, you wouldn't have any coverage. I don't know if that's something that would appeal to
Well,
you.
sure. I think that's pretty much what liability does for you. If you're out in the middle of the Pacific, you're probably not going to hit anybody.
Right, exactly.
So the idea is to have coverage when I'm in a marina. I have not been close to a marina since I left Mexico, so there's no marinas here in the Marquesas. So that's not a problem. I don't know that I'll be heading to Tahiti or not, but if I do, then I'll probably have to get some kind of coverage to be in the Taina marina.
So I'd say maybe go with Dietmar's recommendation on that. And if you decide to go to Tahiti and you are going to be in a marina for a week or two, say, hey, well, I don't have any coverage, but do you have something I can purchase through a local agent that will cover me in the marina just for the period of time I'm here, and see if that would work. That might be the easiest solution for you, since you're comfortable with not having any insurance the rest of the time.
Yeah, well, there is the issue, of course, just being anchored in Hiva-Oa, which is a tight anchorage.
Yeah.
And you drag an anchor and you hit somebody. That's coverage that I'd like to have. So.
Gotcha, sure. And that's we've got our own Mexican vessel liability policy that we created with underwriters in Mexico City years ago. But it's interesting how it's so easy to get Mexican boat liability policy for the time you're in Mexico, and there are several options actually. It's quote bind issue within 5 minutes. It's inexpensive. It would be nice if that existed in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, yeah.
So in order to get liability only insurance for situations where I'm at anchor, because I'm doing a lot of at anchor obviously now on the Marquesas and Tuamotus and Gambier, which is my plan for the next year. And the issue, my largest concern is dragging an anchor basically under situations that are adverse conditions. I'm going to be in the part of the French Polynesia that has very, very low risk for cyclones. That's my plan. But I'm looking for liability insurance. So you're suggesting that perhaps I should find my package and send it to you and see if you have anybody that might be able to do something, or
we're certainly give it a try. Absolutely, we can give it a try and see if we can do that. And it might just be within 200 miles of shore or something like that, but at least it covers you for what your concerns are, and that's, like you say, at anchor. One thing to keep in mind: none of the companies will cover a boat that drags at anchor that's unattended. So I mean,
understood.
Believe it or not, you guys follow this stuff, but there's lots of boats La Paz is a big issue right now that they're dealing with, that they just leave the boat for 3 or 4 months and hope it's there when it comes back. And a lot of times it's not. So they won't do that. But if you're aboard, then, see what we can do.
All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, Serenity, you're up.
Hey, Dietmar. Hey, Craig. Hey, everybody else. Question concerning any insurance considerations regarding lithium batteries. It seems to be quite a bit of speculation or discussion about insurers, particularly for blue water insurance, covering boats with lithium batteries. I know that Dietmar might argue on a crew perspective, anyone wanting this may be somewhat impaired cognitively. But putting that aside, just from a boat insurance perspective, what are some of the things we need to keep in mind?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Markel, which is, they underwrite the Jackline program now. As I mentioned, they've opened it up to all their agents. It's not exclusive to Risk Strategies or Gowrie Group. They don't like lithium batteries on boats. They had some boats burn early on, mostly due to owner installations. And other carriers are becoming, I guess, more aware of them. Some of the mega yacht carriers are putting restrictions on their coverages. There have been a few mega yachts that have burned, actually a $5 million one in Florida just like 2 weeks ago. So yes, it is an issue. And I think it's, they're more efficient for sure. Way more amperage hours for the buck. But I mean, the thermal runaway issue is one that hasn't been dealt with, I guess. So even if they're installed correctly, professionally, if a fire starts, the only way to put it out is basically to sink the boat. It just burns a hole through the bottom of the boat, from what we've seen, and on land as well, not just boats. So yeah, Markel has said, we don't want them. They've loosened up a little bit. If it's a professional installation and you've got receipts to show that, they're loosening up slightly on that sort of thing, but they're still pretty tight. And like I say, some of the companies are just in the process of getting tighter, and they don't want to say no to lithium batteries on, for main battery banks, or for toys with lithium batteries, but they're trying to deal with, what do we do when these things catch fire? One of the marinas we know real well in Mexico is talking about building a concrete structure upland of where the marina is, and saying anybody that wants to charge their bike batteries or whatever else you have, you stick it in that big concrete box, plug it in, and that's it. We don't want to see things being charged on the boat or on the dock at all. So it's kind of a developing thing, but yeah, I understand the attraction of them.
So you're saying, in essence, the bias is becoming more negative as opposed to more relaxed as more and more boats convert. I mean, I understand chemistry means a lot. So the thermal runaway is more specific to lithium ion batteries, which are typical in everything from Teslas to computer batteries. But this is lithium iron phosphate for house batteries. And it seems to be more and more boats have adopted that. And one would have thought that therefore, with that much increased population and penetration of lithium iron phosphate as a technology, in fact, the insurers would be less stringent. But you're saying it's the other way around.
Well, no, I think it's going that way for the let's say smaller boats, not the $50 million mega yacht. I think it is going that way. And we talk with these underwriters all the time. Well, not all of them, but a couple of them that are actually pretty savvy. And we've talked about, well, you get a condition evaluation survey when you purchase a boat. Maybe you get a rig inspection by a rigger. Maybe you get an engine survey with oil analysis on the machinery. Maybe it's time to have a marine electrician that sort of specializes in an electrical survey, especially if you've got, like you say, LiPo battery system on the boat, where they can come say, this thing's installed properly, it's great, it's fine. So I don't know if that's in the future or not, but I feel like the smaller boats, maybe it's getting slightly better, but on the mega yachts, where these losses aren't a few $100,000, they're many multiples of millions. That's an issue. Like we had a $2 million, I think it was a Friday, I can't remember for sure, in Ocean Reef Club a couple of years ago. Guy had his bicycle battery on the main salon, on top of a bureau, charging it, caught fire. burned through the bureau. That's where the flares were, which maybe was not the best spot. Those caught fire. The husband and the son got off. The wife and their dog burned, and the boat burned to the water line and sank. And it was like $2.5 million. So because of a bicycle battery in the main salon. So there's just, that's not the main battery bank. They had just normal AGMs. So it's an issue. And I think that the mega yacht carriers or underwriters are looking at the toys that are stored in the lazarette more than the main battery banks. So it's two different situations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, good question. Thanks. All right, let's move on. Who else would like to get a question in? Jay Mills, are you all set? If not, just make sure you raise your hands.
Yeah, no problem. I can
Yeah.
I can butt in here. How you doing, Craig?
Good, Jay. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Absolutely. So I'm getting ready to coast out of Costa Rica here in about 3 weeks. Boats are there in Papagayo, but I'm heading south. Take about 3 months to get to Ecuador and then across to Galapagos. And I'm covered all the way to there, but I think I need to take a look at it again and look at an extension because I'm going across to Marquesas, Tahiti. Probably spend around a year or so in that area. So availability only, as you know, but
Right.
That's
But
what
yeah, send us your updated itinerary, just a rough one, and let me get that to the underwriter.
All right.
Get it sorted out.
Good. Yeah, appreciate your help in the past. It's always been great.
No, sure. Thank you. Yeah, good to see you.
You too.
All right, moving on to Russell. Go ahead, Russell.
Hey, how's it going? I have a question on the liability side, and maybe it's fetched, but getting liability, a low liability limit, say like 300,000, and if you have an umbrella policy that will carry 4.5 million, how does that work in the boating world? Or have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, the umbrella carriers are all different. So you'd have to talk with whoever that company is or broker is that writes your umbrella, personal umbrella, and make sure it extends to the boat for wherever you happen to go.
So if it's the boat is named on the umbrella policy, right?
Oh, good.
But the umbrella policy is all they say is they want me to have a primary insurance policy to cover $300,000.
Okay.
And then that policy gets hit first, and then as you know, umbrella gets hit second. So
Right.
I just mentioned that because umbrella policies are very inexpensive compared to getting a $5 million boat liability policy, right? So it's like I don't think it's as fluid if you had a claim, but it checks the box, so to speak. And if there's something did happen, the lawyers would have a field day trying to figure out who was going to pay what, I guess.
Exactly right. Yeah, so as long as there's not some weird exclusionary wording in the umbrella policy itself, sounds like you're in good shape, And there probably isn't because the umbrella is supposed to be an umbrella over all your assets, your boat, your car, your house. So I doubt that they would specifically say your boat has to be, for example, in U.S. waters only, but probably should read
Right.
it.
I don't think they're right. And then it's just a quick question on pricing, right? I know every boat's different, but what's the rule of thumb on the percentage that you're seeing? From 15 years ago, it was like 1.5% of the value of the boat for hull and P&I. And now it seems like it's creeping up to 3 to 5% of the value of the boat, with maybe 5 to 10% is the standard for deductible of the value of the boat. Is that the general rule of thumb now, or do you think it's with less and all the reasons you gave earlier, those numbers are only going higher?
Boy, it's all over the place. If you're, in the Caribbean and then you're south of 12 degrees, down in Trinidad or something during hurricane season, and it depends on the value and the age of the boat, the rate could be down at 2% hull value. If you're talking about South Pacific and it's a 20-year-old boat and it's $150,000 value, it could be, like you say, 5 to 7%. So it just really depends.
Oh, I get it. I guess maybe a better question is, what is the dream boat and operator for an underwriter to write? That's a blue water cruising policy, not sitting on my lift slip on the back of my house.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I would say a well-built sailboat from a known manufacturer, real cruising boat, less than 10 years old, you know, in that $500,000 value range for an owner that's done a lot of sailing, got a strong resume, done a lot of the trips that you're talking about doing in the future. That's what they're going to want to see.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, let's go with Melinda, Perception.
Hi, thanks for being here to answer our questions today. I'm another jackline. I'm in that group that we got the notice. So Markel is looking at we haven't gotten our quote yet, but they are telling us that they're not going to have windstorm coverage. They're not going to have blockout dates for the hurricane areas. We're just supposed to stay out of windstorm areas, and we won't be covered if we're in a windstorm. Is that something that you guys are doing?
Markel, yeah, with the jackline program, that's kind of what the conclusion they've come to. They've tried to sort of streamline the program and say, in other words, like, let's say you want to be in the Caribbean, which a lot of people do in the summertime. It's like, you can go to the Virgin Islands in August, and if you get caught up there and there's a hurricane, you don't have coverage. But for a lot of people, that works because they'll go up there in August, and if there's a problem, they'll just duck down to Trinidad, to get out of the way. So that's kind of what they've come up with. Other companies will look at a storm plan and offer windstorm coverage in a lot of places. Now, if you say, look, I'm going to keep the boat in the Virgin Islands all year in the water, they're probably not going to give you windstorm coverage, period.
Right. Well, we're going to move out of the windstorm areas during that time, but we feel that we are a little bit vulnerable. What the definition of a windstorm, we're asking them to come back with us what they consider a windstorm. But if our boat is damaged in the wind, say it's in a marina someplace, and it's not like a hurricane. Should we be looking for a different company altogether just because they're not going to cover any windstorm?
No, it's named or numbered storm. So once something's numbered, let's say it comes out of Africa and they assign a number to it. From that moment on until it plays through the Caribbean and maybe up through the Gulf of Mexico and across Florida and up the Carolinas and finishes itself off in New Jersey, that entire time from being a numbered storm to a named storm, any damage that occurs due to that, the storm deductible would apply or exclusion would apply. Now, if it's just windy, you get 30 or 40 knots or a microburst or something that's not named or numbered, then you still have coverage. So okay. That's kind of the definition. Now, if you're going to be down in Trinidad, I would have said Grenada too until a few months ago. But if you're going to be down in Trinidad for hurricane season, you can usually get named windstorm coverage down there.
Okay.
Just in case. That was a weird one that just came through Grenada, right, a month or so ago.
Right.
So we'd always said, well, if you're in Grenada, or south, you're good. Well, maybe northern Grenada is not such a great place. So yeah, that's kind of how that works.
The other question I have is regarding our range. We have worldwide insurance this year, and it's about to expire, and we never did cross the Atlantic like we had hoped. It was a pretty aggressive itinerary. We're actually thinking we might not make it again this next season. So should we be asking for that Atlantic crossing now, or should we try to add it if it turns out we can actually go?
Right. I would say it's probably better to give them an updated itinerary, tell them what you're going to do, because yeah, the companies like to have a pretty good idea of what your plans are for the next year. They look at capacity. Some are better than others on where the boat's located. Like, for example, if they've got a whole big concentration of boats in one area, they get a little nervous. If they've got a whole bunch of boats doing a transatlantic crossing, like in the Arc, maybe they get a little nervous. So if you're not going to do it, probably better just to let your broker know, hey, look, we're probably not going to do this again this year. Maybe we'll add it next year and kind of go from there. And there might be a premium reduction, a small one,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks. Great question. We'll go with Sarah now. She has her hand up.
Yeah, this is actually Brad. Hey, Dieter.
Hey.
So I can't turn my video on without bailing on Zoom.
Okay.
So a couple questions. I'm currently a Novamar customer, have been for a while. We're currently underwritten by Kima Marine, and there's nothing in our policy at all that mentions batteries or lithium. So is that basically I just don't worry about it?
Yeah, no news is good news. Yeah, we've talked to the underwriter, the underwriting marine manager that we know real well. And it's come up, but he hasn't taken a strong stance against that yet. So yeah, you're fine.
Okay, perfect. And then second question, well, that's a two-parter, I guess. So we have a quote from you. The underwriter is Velos, for our upcoming trip down to Panama.
Okay.
Do you know what their policy on lithium batteries are?
Rob, who looks like he's online now, he writes more with Velos than I do. So Rob, can you speak to that?
Yes. First of all, sorry for my meeting connection here. We were traveling to the Pacific Northwest, the San Juans, and our flight was a little delayed. And I went to where I thought it was going to be a great spot, and they wouldn't turn down the music. So right now I'm in a Irish pub. So I've been listening to everyone's questions and glad to assist in the future here. To Velos per se, I couldn't hear the whole question as far as was it pertaining to the lithium batteries? Is that
lithium iron phosphate
correct?
House banks.
Yes.
Correct.
So they're not excluded with Velos. And especially if you're already written with them, and they review every survey, but it's always best to within our submissions is to provide your installation, and you know, and if the question comes back, I had to come back once as to the underwriting asked for certifications and the experience of the installer.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure if we go that route, I'll have my surveyor document the battery system.
Yeah, and I was listening to Craig's thought of it would be really good to have a specialist in the lithium that we could get okayed by each of the underwriters for these blue water programs, such as Velos and Markel's new program that would be acceptable to them.
Yeah,
So I think it's like you said, it's a work in progress from there.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for that. And then my second question, Craig, you had mentioned unattended boats are obviously uninsured, which I do agree with, but how do you find unattended? If I go out to dinner and there's no one on the boat and a storm, a squall hits, is that classified as unattended?
It depends on the company. With Kima, and I'm not sure about Velos, they don't have that restriction on their policy. What's come up kind of frequently is in Mexico, where we do write a ton of these, vessel liability policies, just to keep these guys legal. They'll leave their boats for months, the boat washes ashore, and they call us for wreck removal. Call the insurance company for wreck removal. They don't cover that. So if you're just at dinner with, I would say, one of the normal policies, I think you're fine.
Okay. Yeah, and I fully support them not covering the derelict boats. That's so it's a hard one. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Sure, you bet. Thank you.
All right, who's next? Joe, did we talk with you? You have any questions for us? What about Dora Marshall? No? Rick V? Okay.
Hey, it's Dora here.
Hey, Dora.
How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Well, we're way up in Canada, and we have a boat that is in the Chesapeake right now. It's just sitting there being stored during hurricane season. Our biggest problem with insurance has been the fact that we're Canadian. The first couple of years we were insured with Geico, and it was very inexpensive, and it seemed to cover what we needed. Then they said that we couldn't stay insured with them unless we couldn't be out of the US for more than 90 days. So that didn't work well. Now we're with Aviva through a Canadian broker. But again, it still has a lot of limitations. And we find when we contact other brokers or other means of insurance, They don't seem to like us because we have, I don't know what to use as an address for service. Because we're Canadian. They either want an American address or something else.
Are you keeping your boat on the harbor somewhere in the US right now?
No, it's at AYB Marina, AYB?
Yeah, Atlantic Yacht
Atlantic
Basin.
Yacht Basin. It's in the water. It's in a shed. It's hooked up to pot power. The air's on.
It's checked every 3 weeks.
It's checked every
or
3
every day
weeks.
there's a security guy.
There's
goes by
security
too.
checked twice a day.
Yeah, so.
And what's, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna ask, what's the age of your boat at this stage?
It's a 21-year-old Nordhaven.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Well, what it might be is Canada has very strict what they call counter signature regulations for insurance. So theoretically, like for example, if you called us and said, hey, we're going to keep the boat in Vancouver or Victoria or something, we would not be able to ride it because Novamar is not licensed in Canada. Got the US company licensed in all 50 states and our Mexico company licensed in Mexico, but not in Canada. So the way we sometimes get around that is if the boat's in US waters or in foreign waters outside the US or Canada, we can ride it with a European carrier. It's even better if you've got like a Green Cove Springs address that you use for mailing and stuff like that, like everybody does. But so
we might be able to do a West Palm address.
Yeah, we're going to find somebody in West Palm that we know that we can.
Not that we live there, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then if you took the boat back to Canada, we probably couldn't do it.
No, we are. It's not going.
It's not coming to Canada.
Yeah.
Too much tax.
Oh, there you go. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Bought the boat in Florida and it has to stay south of the border.
And to go to on our bucket list, or one of our bucket lists, is the Atlantic over to Europe. Are we better off going with a group of boats? I know you had mentioned like a group of boats going across, like the arc going the other way, the eastbound arc. Some carriers don't like that you seem to imply that some carriers don't like being in a group of boats.
That's fine. They don't like racing, but the arc's not really a race; it's a rally. So
and we have a Nordhaven.
Hold on. Quick plug here. We are expanding the Ocean Posse route all the way to Europe. So within a year's time. So,
maybe by then we'll be ready.
Yeah, we're thinking next year. So
yeah, and part of the rally, that's great. That's fine. Been involved in Kubar, the Baja Aja, and the Arc, and a bunch of different things. So yeah, that's fine. That's good.
So basically, is just find somebody with a U.S. address to use for insurance, or
that would be better for us. Yes. Yeah. Now I don't know what Aliva, what their appetite is for transatlantic crossing. I mean, you have a great boat and it's capable of you have the range and all that good stuff. So I don't know if they're able to do a crossing like that or not.
Okay.
It's Lyle here. Can I jump in for 1 second?
Sure.
We're Canadian, also own a Nordhaven, and so I talked earlier, where Global Yacht Cover is our underwriter. Our broker is Dolphin Insurance. So if you want to stay Canadian, there's an option for you.
Yeah. So hold on.
She's
That was
paper.
Dolphin Insurance, Global Yacht.
Global Yacht Cover through Dolphin Insurance. Yeah.
Okay. Just as a sidebar, when you guys come through the canal next year, or you said in January, maybe we'll see you somewhere down in the Caribbean or in the VIs or Panama or somewhere, because we're hoping to head down that way.
Big party in Panama, February 1st, always at Shelter Bay. Just put that on your calendar right now.
Yep.
Okay. I wrote it down. Okay.
Good.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. All right. Who else wants to chime in?
Oh, just for a second.
Yeah.
Do we go through you for health insurance too? If we want to expand our health insurance coverage, or is not you, but
we really don't. I mean, in Mexico, we write health insurance, but that's for people that are in Mexico full time. In fact, my wife and I have our health insurance in Mexico with a Mexican company. But for the global stuff, no, we really don't get involved in that.
Okay. Thought I'd ask.
It's actually easier in Central America to just pay as you go. It's much cheaper. It's health care you pay for. Don't forget.
Exactly. That health insurance helps.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Who else would like to chime in? Todd, you good? Joe, oh wait,
Does
Todd's
Todd
coming
hear-
on.
I just wanted to say hi to Craig and thanks for putting this on. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Hey,
Oh.
Dee, I have one more question.
For you.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, so when I had my monohull on the west coast of the US, I was insured with Geico. So when I bought the catamaran here on the East Coast, that was my first go-to place was Geico. And they came back and said they don't insure catamarans. What's up with that?
Yeah, they stopped insuring multi-hulls about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Why?
As new business, right? Yeah, they said we don't want them anymore. They had just bad loss experience. They're a very actuary data-driven company. We used to do a ton of business with Geico until they cut out all their agents and made lots of changes. No more old boats, no more multi-hulls, not much cruising. I mean, we had one boat that I raced on. They did the South Africa to Cape Town Rio race for us on a sled. So that's how far afield they were riding boats, and then they just really sort of pulled back in the last few years. And catamarans is one of the things they took off the list.
They consider catamarans to be higher risk than monohulls?
They looked at their loss experience, and they determined that for whatever reason they couldn't make it work. I wasn't privy to any of their data. They don't share that with any of us peons, but they said we don't want them anymore. So
yeah, okay.
All right. Ron and Donna, you guys good? Any questions?
No, we're good. I'm chatting from Hornby Island, BC here. We're another global group here from Canada. So we've had them for 4 or 5 years now, and so far everything's been good. But the way the industry is changing, I'm interested to see what's required where and how that might affect us down the road here. So just keeping my ear to the group.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Boats
up the Rio right now, so we'll be back down
great
in November or whatever.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions? We've been on this call for an hour. I know attention spans are running short, and Craig and Rob's eager to get on. Anybody else has any specific questions about insurance? Please come now. All right, good. Well, with that said, the only other thing we have on, thank you, first of all, Craig and Rob, for being on this call. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're certainly going to field many of the insurance questions your way as you're now fully aware and get a better sense of where you're about. Our next call is on Saturday. For those of you joining the Ocean Posse, we have an onboarding call. Make sure you get all your perks. And then starting September 1, we're going to be mailing out the Burgies with a whole bunch of info packs as well. Does anybody else have any questions, any comments before we close this call?
Just one thing, Dimar. So
Yeah.
some people had expressed some interest in having us contact them. Will you be sending me or Rob their contact information?
Yeah, anybody who has their information in the chat room, if you have your emails in here, we will forward that to Craig and Rob.
Okay, great. So we'll
And
get
if not, just go to oceanposse.com/Novamar, and that will get you in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just a quick question. For those of us who've used Novamar in the past, does it make a difference which agent you use? I mean, we were fine with Keith Sargis out of the Connecticut office, but he wasn't able to underwrite us last year. Do you have access to things he doesn't, or is it all the same?
It's all the same, but I would say Rob and I are kind of spearheading this effort. So it's probably better to contact Rob or myself, probably Rob first, just because we're kind of shepherding this Ocean Posse thing through, and we've got lots of people all over the country, and Keith's a great guy, but I think that would probably make the most sense. And Rob and I have done more sailing than anybody else too, if that makes any difference. So
we like sailors.
And normally I'm available any time to assist as well. Just
sometimes from a pub in Seattle.
7 days a week.
All right.